let's go ahead and get into the Assange stuff, man. This is going to be very hard, very annoying to do because they're going after this man for no reason. It's craziness. It's madness, actually. But let's go ahead and get into that. Let's see. Here we go. No, I don't want your dumb stuff. So yeah, this is just a article, quick article from CNN. Uh, Julian Assange's extradition to U.S. approved by the United Kingdom government, and that was by Priti Patel. I forget what her official title. They're actually about to say it. So the UK Home Secretary Priti Patel has signed an order to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to the United States, where he faces espionage charges. Now we're going to get into that, and I have an article from Glenn Greenwald that we're going to read through, so we're going to get into that. His organization said marked a dark day for press freedom. A London court issued a formal extradition order back in April, leaving Patel to rubber stamp his transfer to the U.S. after a year-long battle. The decision will likely see months more of legal wrangling. Jennifer Robinson, Assange's legal counsel, said Friday that an appeal would be brought and that the case could ultimately be taken to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Let's hope that is the case. Let's hope that is the case. This is not the end of the road, and we will see every appeal mechanism available to us to prevent this extradition, she told a press conference. In a Friday statement, WikiLeaks asserted that Assange committed no crime and is not a criminal, adding that he is not he is a journalist and publisher who is being pushed for doing his job. This is a dark day for press freedom and British democracy. Anyone who cares about freedom of expression should deeply be ashamed, WikiLeaks added. So that's that. I just wanted to read a little bit of that just so you guys can understand what's going on. Julian Assange certain to die in U.S. custody if extradited. Hang on. Because that almost act dumb. Wow. I just had it up. Sorry about that, guys. Computer's acting dumb sometimes. But yeah, Julian Assange certain to die in U.S. custody if extradited. His wife warns. So his wife is Stella Morris Assange. They actually just recently he was allowed to marry his longtime partner. And while he was in jail, he was literally locked up in Belmarsh prison. Belmarsh is literally like they call it basically the British version of Guantanamo Bay. So Julian Assange, he's not a violent criminal. He's not like they literally put members of like ISIS and Al Qaeda in these prisons. Like this is a hardcore prison. And Julian Assange, he's not a violent criminal. They're literally like he's not a criminal at all. So he shouldn't be in there at all. But the fact that they're putting them in there lets me know and lets the whole world know. Like a lot of people in the journalist world know that they're doing this to send a statement to any journalist who crosses power. So that's what his wife had to say about it. So let's go ahead and get into this Glenn Greenwald article that I think pretty much it sums it up very well. The UK's decision to extradite Assange shows why the US UK's freedom lectures are a farce. The Assange persecution is the greatest threat to Western press freedoms in years. It is also a shining monument to the fraud of American and British self depictions. The 11-year persecution of Julian Assange was extended and escalated on Friday morning. The British Home Secretary Priti Patel approved the U.S.'s extradition request to send Julian Assange to Virginia to stand trial on 18 felony charges under the 1917 Espionage Act and other statutes in connection with the 2010 publication. Now, Glenn's going to get into it, but I'm later in the article, which we're going to read, but I just want to go ahead and say this up front. The fact that they're prosecuting a journalist under the Espionage Act should be anybody who talks about free speech, when it's not in reference to, pink and purple haired college kids running you off campus or beefing with people on Twitter, beefing with liberals and woke people online and everything like that. Like, this is actually like government repression of freedom of speech, and it's gone from administration to administration. it was under the started with the Obama administration. It started with, then continued on into the Trump administration. Trump actually was the one that indicted him. I covered this on the show previously. Go look through my catalog where I have covered Assange, but Obama, who was known for prosecuting whistleblowers and going after journalists, he said it was a step too far because it would basically render the, like Glenn is saying here, the First Amendment a farce, because like you're prosecuting a journalist like that. So them prosecuting Assange for him releasing, so he's not being charged for the DNC leaks that he put out. That's not what he's being charged for. Democrats would like you to think that's what he's being charged for. He's actually being charged for releasing classified military documents that exposed United States war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq and a couple other places as well. The most popular thing he put out that people know of from those leaks is the collateral murder video, where it shows US soldiers in an Apache helicopter killing innocent civilians. Two of them were Reuters journalists too, if I'm not mistaken. They were Reuters journalists that got killed. And then when the medics came to try and help these people, they circled around and did what's called a double tap, and they killed all of the medics in that vehicle as well. And they were laughing about it, calling them all types of epithets and shit like that. So, he exposed shit like that, like brutal war crimes. And for a long time, liberals used to be pretty much pro Assange. It was always like, conservatives and Republicans that were like, fuck Assange, he's a criminal. Like Meghan McCain to this day would probably still call Julian Assange a fucking cyber criminal, whatever the fuck that is. And what's interesting also in this case is that with Assange, it was actually revealed. So the Justice Department, I covered this as well. Go check out my video. Like I said, go check out my catalog. I have, videos on here where I talk about Assange's case. But so they have a witness who allegedly like witnessed Julian Assange hacking, doing basically breaking the law and acquiring these illegal documents or these classified documents in Iceland. So when Iceland had its economic crash, Assange was actually instrumental in revealing how corrupt the banks in Iceland were moving, which led to a lot of the bankers in Iceland getting locked up. Iceland, they actually locked up the bankers that crashed the economy and destroyed people's lives. But they're using this guy. His name is like Siggy the Hacker. I forget what his full name is, like, but that's his nickname. He goes by Siggy the Hacker. Like I said, go back and watch my video about it. But this guy is like a known. He's basically like a con man. He's like a known con man. He's even a pedophile as well. The United States actually blocked him from facing charges for sexual assault and rape of a minor in Iceland. So there goes that. But they offered this guy asylum in exchange for him testifying that he witnessed Julian Assange basically doing illegal hacker shit, to acquire these documents. But then now, Stunden, which is a outlet in Iceland, I believe, a journalistic outlet in Iceland, they actually did an interview with the guy where he said, "Yeah, I made this shit up. It's bullshit. It's a lie. I fabricated and exaggerated a lot of what happened in that, in that whole situation." So the fact that the Justice Department's case is falling apart and the United Kingdom government is still going along with this is bullshit, honestly. So right now they're arguing on the pretenses that Assange, as I showed you, like what his wife said, but that's what his legal team is arguing, that he won't survive in an American prison. There was actually a lower court that blocked the extradition, not because of the merits of him being, whether what he did was illegal or not, acting as a journalist and publisher, but she blocked the extradition on the basis that, hey, this guy is not going to survive. American prisons are so horrible. This guy's not going to survive. So we're not going to send him there. And that's what the judge ruled. And then the United States was allowed to appeal, and it got kicked up to a higher court, which thus resulted in this as we see today. So that was just a quick rundown. I'm pretty sure Glenn is going to cover it here, but it's just, it's insane. So, but continuing, approved the U.S.'s extradition request to send Julian Assange to Virginia to stand trial on 18 felony charges under the 1917 Espionage Act and other statutes in connection with the 2010 publication by WikiLeaks of thousands of documents showing widespread corruption, deceit, and war crimes by American and British authorities, along with their close dictatorial allies in the Middle East that Joe Biden is going to be going to pay a visit to next month to beg for oil, to get on his knees and give the fucking Saudi crown prince to Gok 3000 for some oil. We're actually going to be talking about Saudi Arabia and oil later on in the Venezuela story. Actually, fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. I never talked about it. I've talked about it in the channel, but I never like presented it. So it's going to be pretty. I think it's going to be, kind of educational for those that don't know, but we'll get into it. This decision is unsurprising. It has been obvious for years that the US and UK are determined to destroy Assange as punishment for his journalism exposing their crimes. Yet it nonetheless further highlights the utter sham of American and British sermons about freedom, democracy, and a free press. So they lambast countries like Iran, Syria, China, Russia, all the time about how they're not democratic and they don't have free speech, but you guys don't have free speech. You're literally persecuting a journalist right now. There's another guy that's in prison, Mumia Abu Jamal. I hope I'm saying his name right, who's also, a political prisoner journalist. And then, they don't talk about Gary Webb, who literally, like, he was the one that revealed that the United States was funneling drugs into black community, drugs and weapons into the black community, specifically, via the Iran Contra scam and all that jazz. And mysteriously, he committed suicide by shooting himself in the head twice. Nobody talks about this guy. They think he's like a conspiracy theorist and all this shit. It's insanity. But that, and then the fact that you have journalists, like Chris Hedges, who got fired from the New York Times for for speaking out against the Iraq war, and now he has to write. He has to go work at outlets like RT now. Now they just call him a Russian propagandist. I think his show actually got taken off the air when they basically like censored RT worldwide in the fucking EU and the United States. So, but they persecute journalists here all the time and repress journalists here all the time, except the ones that repeat and parrot their narratives. So the fact that they can go lecture the world about this shit is just utterly, it's hysterical on its face. So, but those performative self-glorifying spectacles are constantly deployed to justify countries interference and attacks on other nations, and to allow their citizens to feel a sense of superiority about the nature of their governments, i.e. American exceptionalism and whatever, Eurocentric, whatever Europe calls their bullshit. After all, if the US and UK stand for freedom and against tyranny, who could possibly oppose their wars and interventions in the name of advancing such lofty goals and noble values? Having reported on Assange case for years on countless occasions, I've laid out, like I just did, the detailed background that led Assange in the U.S. to this point. There is thus no need to recount all of that again. And he just he cites things that you can read and everything. But in 2012, Ecuador granted Assange legal asylum from political persecution, and they did a Benedict Cumberbatch. I think it was called like The Fifth Estate or something. He portrayed Assange, and everything like that. I've never seen the movie. I've heard some of the things in the story is bullshit and things like that. I think Daniel Brühl was in it as well. I've heard Hollywood is bullshit. So I've heard the movie was bullshit. I've never seen it, but if you've seen the movie, you should kind of know the story, even though it's probably through a fucking bullshit mainstream, like a certain perspective, as Obi-Wan Kenobi would say. But it did so after the Swedish government refused to pledge that it would not exploit the WikiLeaks founders travel to Sweden to answer sex assault accusations as a pretext to turn them over to the U.S., fearing what, of course, ended up happening, that the U.S. was determined to do everything possible to drag Assange back to the United States soil, despite his not being a U.S. citizen and never having spent more than a few days on U.S. soil, and intending to pressure their longtime submissive Swedish allies to turn him over once he was on Swedish soil. The government of Ecuadorian President Rafael Carrera concluded Assange's core civic rights were being denied and thus gave him refuge in a tiny Ecuadorian embassy in London. The classic reason political asylum exists. So it's very interesting. So he had like a sex assault case that, it was bullshit. It was made up. It was basically, like he described here, used as a ploy to get him on the Swedish soil so the United States could then step in and extradite him. And that's why he didn't go. And that's why he went to Ecuador and all that jazz. So, it's nothing but complete bullshit. They're trying to draw this guy in for, let's say, hypothetically, even if he was guilty of the sex crimes that they're accusing him of, like, these motherfuckers let Jeffrey Epstein walk for decades with all the bullshit that he was doing. And they're like, but the media, they let him, for decades do his thing, never reported on. They actually had stories on Epstein that they purposely buried because of Epstein's connections to powerful, political figures, media figures, and other wealthy people and shit like that. So, even with that hypothetical, because it's been proven that he didn't do what they were accusing him of. It was used as a ploy to get him to go to Sweden, as they admitted, so they could extradite him. Now, this is interesting. Here we get, and this is where I say it's gone from administration to administration to administration. When Trump officials led by CIA Director Mike Pompeo bullied Carrera's meek successor, ex-president Lenin Moreno, to withdraw that asylum in 2019, the London police entered the embassy, arrested Assange, and put him on a high-security Belmarsh prison, which the BBC in 2004 dubbed the British Guantanamo, where he has remained ever since. And his health has been deteriorating, all types of, crazy, horrible shit. Like, his health, like literally when you see pictures of him, the very few pictures that you can get, like you could clearly tell his health is deteriorating, being in this prison. And he has Asperger's as well and other mental health conditions from living in a tiny room for like 7-8 years. So for the lowest level British court, in early 2021 rejected the U.S. extradition request on the ground that Assange's physical health and mental health cannot endorse. So that's what I was talking about. Assange has lost every subsequent appeal. Last year, he was permitted to marry his longtime girlfriend Stella Morris, as I said, who was also the mother of their two young children. An extremely unusual unanimity. I hope I pronounced that right. Glenn always uses these big ass fucking words, even when he's talking. So I'm like, dude, come on. But among press freedom and civil liberties groups was formed in early 2021 to urge the Biden administration to cease its prosecution of Assange. But Biden officials, despite spending the Trump years masquerading as press freedom advocates, they really weren't, ignored them. An interview conducted last week with Stella Morris by my husband, the Brazilian Congressman David Miranda on Brazil's, and the guy who's writing this article, Glenn Greenwald, look into his work. He was the guy that worked with Edward Snowden. They worked together to expose the leaks with like two other journalists, I believe, as well. One was a videographer, and another guy was a journalist for The Guardian, I believe. Or another outlet, because Glenn was at The Guardian at that time. I forget what outlet the other guy was in, but watch the Citizen4 documentary as well. It gives you a clear insight into what was going on at the time. Glenn is one of the, along with Assange, one of the greatest journalists of our generation. So, they try to lampoon him now because he spends his time now calling out, rightfully so, the hypocrisy of liberals and Democrats, because liberals and Democrats have now become the Republican Party of old, which, newsflash, they've always been that. But they don't, like, a lot of like lefties, people that call themselves lefties and progressives don't like him no more because he calls out liberals bullshit and the Democratic Party's bullshit. But he's one of the greatest journalists of our generation. The Home Secretary's decision this morning, characteristically subservient and obedient of the British when it comes to the demands of the U.S. And like I said, I literally, like, Britain is like our little bitch now at this point. It's like mini America. You feel me? Like even though they came before, it's like we birthed y'all niggas. Like, oh God, like when we tell them to do something, they say how high. They're our little poodle. Europe is all of our little poodles. The only ones that kind of buck a little bit is France, a little bit, but not too much. But all in all, Europe is our little bitches. They're our little satellite states, to fuck with countries like Russia and China and shit, and other countries we don't like. So, but does not mean that Assange's presence on U.S. soil is imminent. Under British law, Assange has the right to pursue a series of appeals contesting the Home Secretary's decision, and will likely do so, as it said in that CNN article. Given that the British judiciary has more or less announced in advance their determination to follow the orders of their American masters, it is difficult to see how these further proceedings will have any effect other than to delay the inevitable. But putting oneself in Assange's position, it's easy to see why he is eager to avoid extradition to the U.S. for as long as possible. And this is where he goes into the history of the Espionage Act. The Espionage Act of 1917 is a nasty and repressive piece of legislation. It was designed by Woodrow Wilson and his band of authoritarian progressives to criminalize dissent against Wilson's decision to involve the U.S. in World War I. It was used primarily to imprison anti-war leftists, such as Eugene Debs, as well as anti-war religious leaders such as Joseph Franklin Rutherford, for the crime of publishing a book condemning Wilson's foreign policy. Now, I never heard of that second guy. I'm actually going to look into him. But Eugene Debs is somebody I've heard about. He was a very big influence, a very big figure in the socialist and communist movements, and in this era, like the early 20th century and things like that. And they actually arrested him after he gave a speech condemning the our involvement in World War One. Because he was an anti-war figure. So very fascinating stuff. But you see how they're using it now, and he's about to describe it right here. And I've talked about this before on my channel about how Obama was hostile to journalism and people that were leaking information, about what the government was doing. Hostile to these people, whistleblowers. They talk about how they want to protect whistleblowers now. Obama was hawkish towards them, as he's about to describe. One of the most insidious, despotic innovations of the Obama administration was to repurpose and revitalize the Wilson-era Espionage Act, as well as an all-purpose weapon to punish whistleblowers who denounced Obama's policies. The Obama Justice Department, under Attorney General Eric Holder, prosecuted more whistleblowers under the Espionage Act of 1917 than all previous administrations combined. In fact, 3 times as many as all presidents combined. One whistleblower charged by Obama officials under that law is NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, who in 2013 revealed mass domestic spying of precisely the kind that Obama's director of national intelligence, James Clapper, who now works on CNN. So you see how the news is propaganda. So this guy James Clapper famously lied in front of Congress about whether the United States was illegally spying and warrantlessly spying on American citizens. And like he literally said, no, not to our knowledge. And the guy, the senator, I believe, who asked him the question was like, wait, what? Like, nigga, we know you are. Like, would you like to try again? He looked at her like, would you like to try again, sir? And he lied again. So now this guy, who was the head, the director of national intelligence, now works at CNN. And he's one of the guys telling you why NATO needs to take on Russia right now. So you see how propagandistic your fucking media is? You can't believe a fucking word they say. Falsely denied conducting when testifying to the Senate, which led to legislative curbs enacted by the U.S. Congress, which courts have ruled unconstitutional and illegal. So the basis on which they went after Snowden has been ruled that he was in the right. But unfortunately, since they charged him with the Espionage Act, you literally can't make a defense. So he's actually about to explain this here. What makes this law so insidious is that by design, it is almost impossible for the government to lose. As I detailed in a Washington Post op-ed, when the indictment was first revealed, arguing why it poses the greatest threat to press freedoms in the West in years, this 1917 law is written as a strict liability statute, meaning that the defendant is not only guilty as soon as there is proof that they disclose classified information without authorization, but they are also barred from raising a justification defense, meaning they can't even argue to the jury of their peers that it was not only permissible, but morally necessary to disclose that information because of the serious wrongdoing and criminality it revealed on the part of the nation's most powerful political officials. Now, one of the things they like to say about Assange is that, well, his work has led to people, whether it's agents, soldiers, whatever, getting killed. Bullshit. Has been a lie. Like the government itself, the military itself, our intelligence communities have admitted that that's bullshit. And also the process on which WikiLeaks goes through to make sure they redact names to actually protect people. Like they would offer to work with the CIA, and the CIA would tell them to fuck off because like they're about to expose them. So they're not going to, work with the niggas. They're not going to help WikiLeaks expose them. So there was actually one instance though, where there was a Washington Post reporter, I believe. He wrote a book about, working with WikiLeaks, and he actually revealed, redacted information. A Washington Post journalist did. But continuing, that 1917 law, in other words, is written to offer only show trials, but not an actual fair trial. No person in her right mind would willingly submit to persecution and life imprisonment in the harshest American penitentiaries under an indictment brought under this fundamentally corrupted law. Whatever else one might think of Assange, there is simply no question that he is one of the most consequential, pioneering, and accomplished journalists of our time. One can easily make the case that he occupies the top spot by himself. And that, of course, is precisely why he is in prison, because just like free speech, free press guarantees in the US and UK exist only on a piece of parchment and in theory. Citizens are free to do journalism as long as it does not disturb or anger or impede real power centers. Employees of the Washington Post and CNN are free to say what they want as long as what they are saying is approved and directed by the CIA, or content of their reporting advances the interest of the Pentagon's sprawling war machine. And you see that going on literally right now. Like before this whole war in Ukraine broke out, um, there was a point where Biden went to he had that summit with Putin, and like they were like literally pushing this guy, like, were you aggressive with him? Did you tell him he can't da da da? Like basically saying, did you bucket this nigga? And Biden's like, yo, chill. Like even Biden he started snapping on reporters because they were like, yo, you're tripping, basically. Now, that's not me saying Biden is an anti-war person, because look at what he's doing right now. He just sent Ukraine $50 billion fucking dollars. And now I was actually just reading a story earlier about how like the Ukrainians are selling our weapons on the dark web to make money off them shits. And now he's trying to propose a bill. I think it actually went through to send them $1.5 billion like a day or a week or some shit like that. Utter fucking lunacy and insanity. While you literally have people here sleeping under bridges, you have children going hungry at night, all types of crazy shit going on. It's fucking insanity. But real journalists often face threats of persecution, imprisonment, or even murder, and sometimes even mean tweets. He's making fun of Taylor Lorenz of the Washington Post with that one. But much of the American corporate media class has ignored Assange's persecution or even cheered it, precisely because he shames them, serving as a vivid mirror to show them what real journalism is and how they were completely bereft of it. And the American and British governments have successfully exploited the petty jealousies and insecurities of their failed, vapid, and pointless media servants to get away with imposing the single greatest threat to press freedom in the West without much protest at all. Free speech and press freedoms do not exist in reality in the U.S. or the U.K. They are merely rhetorical instruments to propagandize their domestic population and justify and ennoble the various wars and other forms of subversion they constantly wage in other countries in the name of upholding values they themselves do not support. The Julian Assange persecution is a great personal tragedy, a political travesty, and a grave danger to basic freedoms, but it is also a bright and enduring monument to the fraud and deceit that lies at the heart of these two governments' depictions of who and what they are. So very, very good article by Glenn Greenwald. I thought it was very good. And, you know, like I said, man, like the way they're going after this guy, it lets you know that he struck a nerve. He struck a chord, and they're pissed off about it. They hate it. They seethe at it. And that's why they get their little media poodles to go out. That's why they throw, oh, he stopped Queen Hillary from becoming Queen of America. Like they throw that shit out as liberal claptrap bullshit. And like I said, most Americans don't even know who the guy is. They don't even know who the guy is. So, you know, all in all, man, free Assange, dog. My man should not be sitting in prison for revealing war crimes. Free all the political prisoners, or political prisoners. Free all the journalists in jail sitting right now. Free all the niggas. Free Assange, man. It's utter insanity and lunacy. But yeah. So